the prisoners and deal with them in accordance with— Pandemonium reigned. At Crown and Shield's signal for the guards to leave the room with their captives, all 6 had strained furiously at their bonds, and 3 of them had broken free in a flash, throwing themselves upon the guards with unthinkable ferocity. Stevens, seeing a ray projector in a hand of one of the prisoners, hurled his heavy chair instantly and with terrific force. The projector flew into the air, shattered and useless, while the Hexan was knocked into a corner by the momentum of the massive projectile and lay there, stunned and broken. Brandon, likewise reacting instantaneously, had bent over and seized a leg of the table, bracing his knee against the corner. With a mighty lunge of his powerful body, he wrenched out the support, and with a continuation of the same motion, he brought the jagged oak head of his terrible club down full upon the crown of the second Hexan, who had already torn one guard apart and was leaping toward Kazov, his hereditary foe. In mid-flight, he was dashed to the floor, his head a shapeless, pulpy mass, and Brandon, bludgeon again aloft, strode deeper into the fray. For a brief moment, searing lethal beams probed here and there, chains clanked and snapped, once more that ponderous and irresistible oaken mace fell like the hammer of Thor, again splattering brains and blood abroad as it descended. Then again came silence. The 6 erstwhile prisoners lay dead, but they had taken 5 of the guards with them, literally dismembered, hideously torn limb from limb by the superhuman, incredible physical strength and utter ferocity of the Hexans. By common consent, the meeting was adjourned to another room, for the business in hand could not be postponed. Captain Kazov was right. We Tellurians could not believe in the existence of such a race without the evidence of our own senses. Newton reopened the meeting. From this time on, we take no prisoners. Dr. Brandon, you may resume. The detectors and lookouts will give ample warning of any attack, and Dr. Westfall has suggested that we should have all possible facts at hand before we try to decide upon a course of action. We should like to hear the full reports of Captain King, Captain Kazov, Chief Pilot Breckenridge, and Dr. Stevens. The 4 men told their stories tersely and rapidly, while the others listened in deep attention. As the last speaker sat down, Newton again turned to Brandon, who silently jerked his head at Westfall, knowing his own inadequacy in such a situation, realizing that here was needed Westfall's cold and methodical thinking. "Director Newton and gentlemen," Westfall spoke calmly and precisely, "we have much to do before we can meet the Hexans upon equal terms. We have many new fields of force and rays to develop, of whose nature and necessity Dr. Brandon is already aware. Then, too, we must recalculate our visirays so that we can operate at greater range and efficiency. We must also examine the Hexan spaceship which is towing, to do which it will be desirable to drift at constant velocity for a time. In it we may find instruments or devices as yet unknown to us. It also occurs to me that, since this is an interplanetary police problem of the first magnitude, we should at once get in touch with police headquarters, so that the Peace Fleet can be armed as we ourselves are, or shall be armed. For a large and highly efficient fleet will be necessary to do that which must be done. It is, of course, a foregone conclusion that interplanetary humanity will support the humanity of Callisto against the Hexans. It is also self-evident that we must stay here and rescue the Tellurians now upon Europa and Callisto, but we are not yet in position to decide just how that rescue is to be accomplished. 4 courses are apparently open to us. First, to attempt it as soon as we shall have strengthened our armament as much as is now possible. That would invite a massed attack, and in my opinion would be foolish, probably suicidal. Second, to stand by at a distance until the rocket ship is launched, then to escort it back to the Earth. Third, to aid the Calistonians as much as possible while awaiting the completion of the rocket vessel. Fourth, and perhaps the most feasible and quickest, it may be possible for the Calistonian rocket ships to bring out fellow Tellurians, a few at a time, to us here out in space, since they are apparently able to come and go at will. However, I would recommend that we make no plans for the rescue as yet. There is little use in attempting to deal with an ever-changing situation until we are ready to act forthwith. I suggest that we strengthen our offensive and defensive armament first, then secure information as to the exact status of affairs, both upon Callisto and upon Europa. Then, ready to act, we will do at once whatever seems called for by the situation then obtaining. The program as outlined seems eminently sensible. Are there any comments or suggestions? None having been offered, Director Newton adjourned the meeting, and each man attacked his particular problem. True to Kazov's prediction, the Hexans did not deem it worthwhile to pursue the terrestrial vessel, so obviously and so earnestly fleeing from them, and shortly the acceleration was cut off, to render possible a thorough study of the two halves of the spherical warship of the enemy. Scientists donned spacesuits and studied every feature of the strange vessel, while mechanics dismantled and transferred to the Sirius every device and instrument of interest. One or two novel and useful applications of rays and forces were found, their visirays and communicators in particular being of a high degree of efficiency. But upon the whole, the science of the Hexans was found to be inferior to that now known to the scientists of Interplanetary's flying laboratory. Brandon studied the Hexan power system most carefully, and everything in readiness, and after a long talk with Westfall, he called a general conference in the control room. "Gentlemen, we have done about everything we can do for the time being. By combining the best features of the visirays and communicators of the Hexans with our own newly perfected devices, we now have a really excellent system of communication. Our friends from Mars and Venus have so altered and enlarged our force controls that our offensive and defensive fields, rays and screens leave little to be desired. In power, we are far ahead of the enemy. They apparently know nothing of the possibilities of cosmic radiation, but depend upon tight beam transmission from their own power plants, which transmission they have perfected to a point far beyond anything reached by us of the 3 planets. They do not use accumulators, and therefore their dissipation is limited to their maximum reception, which is about 70,000 kilofrancs. Since we can dissipate 10 times that amount of energy, we could withstand, for a short time, the simultaneous attacks of 10 of their vessels. 11 or more of them, however, would be able to crush our defensive screens, and Captain Kazov has seen as many as 100 of their spaceships in one formation. Furthermore, since they have several times our maximum acceleration, they could concentrate quickly upon any desired point. We could not escape them by flight if they really set out to overtake us, which they certainly will do if we again venture into their territory. Therefore, it is clear that we cannot subject ourselves to any attack in force, and it follows that we cannot do much of anything until the police fleet of some 500 vessels can be rearmed and can join us near Callisto. This will require several months at best. As you already know, it has been decided that we should not return to any of the minor planets, as to do so might invite a Hexan attack upon our police fleet which is as yet unprepared. We are now heading for Uranus, in the hope that such a course will distract the attention of the Hexans from Tellus, even though they probably already know that we are Tellurians. Our new communicator ray will reach any member of the Jovian system from this point. It has been decided that it is safe to use it, since it employs an almost absolutely tight beam of very small diameter, and since we know that one Hexan vessel, at least, had no apparatus sufficiently sensitive to detect a beam of that nature. We will therefore now get in touch with the Calistonians and with our own people." Brandon seated himself before the communicator screen, and while the others packed themselves closely around his stool, he snapped on the visiray and turned the dials which directed that invisible, immensely complex beam through space. The screen was apparently in itself a coign of vantage.